Stories of innovation and success from the vibrant communities of rural Nova Scotia. This is Ignited.
Hey there, welcome to Ignited the podcast, where we celebrate innovation and rural success. I'm Wade Cleveland. I work for a rural innovation hub called Ignite. And we help build vibrant economies in rural Nova Scotia by bringing together startups, industry, youth, and community. And this is the second of our annual Women Founders Series podcast. And today, I'm chatting with sisters Miranda and Alicia Teasdale, the founders of Teasdale Apothecary, a full-service, independent pharmacy that harkens back to a simpler time, even in the term apothecary. They're a compounding pharmacy, which is the art and science of creating custom medications from raw materials, and they're transforming patient and consumer experience with what they do. On top of basic pharmacy services, they offer high-quality, low-waste choices for household and personal care products, and have even begun a program of offering prescriptions in reusable and returnable glass bottles, keeping potentially thousands of plastic bottles out of the landfill. They are also a community pharmacy primary care clinic. I know that sounds like a big term, but it's really great, and it's part of a pilot project in Nova Scotia enabling pharmacists to give prescriptions for various ailments, renew prescriptions, and a whole lot more. Miranda and Alicia, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us.
Everything for you guys kind of began in Alberta, right?
It was March 2020 when we actually started throwing around the idea of the apothecary. Actually, it was the very first weekend that we all went into lockdown in March. Both of us living in Alberta at the time. Miranda was in Fort McMurray and I was in Calgary. And I was working, I'm a social worker by profession and have been working in nonprofit senior management for a while. And my kind of passion project for the last decade has always been thinking about the products that I use and finding new ways to create products for my body, products for my household. And I was like, I want to open a store. And then I was thinking of my sister who was managing a compounding pharmacy up in Fort McMurray. And I was like, what if we did this as a pharmacy, as a drugstore that operated like a pharmacy, sold products that you typically find in a drugstore, but ones that were good for people and good for the planet. So I called her up and she was completely on board. But the funny part was that it definitely happened a lot quicker than we thought. And maybe I'll let Miranda jump in and talk about what it was like getting that phone call.
Yeah, it was totally out of the blue, to be honest. But I was really excited. And it was originally going to be our 5-year get out of Alberta plan to move home. But during the pandemic, things just kind of escalated and we ended up kind of getting the ball rolling a lot faster than we had anticipated. And it was pretty much a year to the day. And we were driving across the country.
So you put the plan kind of together from Alberta and then planned to head home. You're originally from the Antigonish area, right?
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. And when we talked about this, like Miranda said, it was like, this will be 5 years down the road. But 6 months later, we were still living in Alberta. The pandemic was still very much happening. We were still very restricted. And we kind of felt that itch to be home. And there were opportunities that came up. We had talked to the bank, like, is this feasible for us right now? And they said, very much so. It could be, put a business plan together. So it was like October, November. So again, 6 months after the inception of the idea, we started working on the business plan. It took us about 2 to 3 months to complete. And then by January, February of 2021, the business plan got approved. We had secured a location. We bought a building in Antigonish, sight unseen. And it just all fell through. And when we got the news, it was like when everything got approved, I would say it was probably February.
Yeah.
And basically it was like, you have 30 days. Like the building will close in 30 days. We need to be home. So we had to wrap up our lives and our jobs in Alberta. Miranda had to try to sell her house. So 30 days later, we packed up the dogs, a truck and a trailer, and we just drove across the country.
Can I be honest? That sounds terrifying.
It was. So funny. Like, we're coming up, next month on like the 3 years of us doing that. And it was like so terrifying, but also just exhilarating. It felt like a good kind of terrifying. Like,
I remember we actually officially closed on our building while we were driving across the country. Because me and my husband were on our way to Calgary to pick you up, and we had to pull over at a gas station. And we were on Zoom with our realtor doing a walkthrough of the building and getting ready to close. And we had a friend pick up our keys.
I've never heard a story that where everything came together quite so quickly. Let's slow it down a little bit and go back to you guys deciding you were going to do this and putting together the actual business plan. Now, with your work in nonprofits and that kind of thing, did you have experience putting business plans together? Like, where did the skill sets come from? How did you figure this all out?
Alicia is incredible. Like, I know you can speak to like your experience for like grant proposals and stuff like that, but she crafted the most impressive, beautiful business plan I've ever seen in my life. And even our people at the bank said that. So I'll let you take it from here.
So nonprofit world, obviously very different, but a ton of experience in writing reports. Also in the nonprofit world, you get very creative looking for money, right? We are constantly writing funding proposals and appealing to those who are going to be funding projects and the nonprofit work that we do. And so this time I had to really think about that, like, how am I doing this in the for-profit world or as a business plan? And it took a lot of research, and I just relied on my writing skills. And again, it took months, but I was very diligent, really broke down the different sections and really wanted to speak to what it was that we were doing and how we were going to be doing it differently. I really did not want this to come across somebody's desk looking like any old generic business plan. I put a lot of thought and creativity into really selling the idea of making this a community space that provides a healthcare service, but it is trauma-informed, which again is my background coming from doing anti-violence work. That's trauma-informed and really focusing on health on so many levels. So yes, the healthcare practice that we offer when we think about pharmacy and medicine, but also health on so many levels, like how people feel when they walk in the door, how we are taking care of our environment while we're also taking care of people. And so, yeah, I think just tapping into some creativity.
Yeah, what you're talking about is something truly unique. And I think that's the thing. And it's kind of interesting when you run into the term, actually. It harkens back to an earlier time, if you will, because Teasdale Apothecary, it's not pharmacy. An apothecary certainly has its own set of visuals, if you will, at least in my head. Let's go back to the old days, the older ways of things.
That's exactly what we were thinking. The choice of the name was completely intentional. We wanted to go back to the original word for pharmacy, for healthcare, and back when there was a kind of sense of community. And at the apothecary, medicine was made. It wasn't just kind of a custom order, like, just dispensing. There was a whole sense of community behind it. So the choice of the name was completely intentional.
Yeah, the creation of compounds and those kind of things that's an amazing thing.
The name kind of bit us in the butt at first because, I would say for the first 12 months of us being open, and still even now, people are like, oh, I didn't know you were a pharmacy. And we're like, yes, we're a pharmacy. We are a real pharmacy. Quote, unquote, real.
Yes, real. Mm-hmm.
A real pharmacy. I find that's really interesting. I find that kind of funny. So tell me a little bit about the experience of becoming an entrepreneur, because it has to be a different thing. And that certainly there's a learning curve there.
100%. And, me and Alicia are both very, very independent, strong-willed people, and we are stubborn to a fault sometimes, and we just knew that we were going to do this one way or another, and because we are, a small business, we had no idea what we were doing, to be honest, and just trying to navigate everything from the renovations to getting permits. It was like the chicken and the egg. We would go and they would say, no, you need this, this, and this, but to get A, you needed B, and it was overwhelming, but we were determined, and we just did what we had to do to get it done.
How much time did all of that take? That had to be a very frustrating process. It usually is.
We also did the renovations to the building ourselves. So my husband is a carpenter, so he was kind of the contractor, and me and Alicia were his very skilled laborers. So between getting all the permits and doing our renovations from the time we arrived in Nova Scotia to the time we opened was about 9 months.
That's not terrible. How bad a shape was the building in when you picked it up?
It was in really decent shape, but it was prior to turning it into the apothecary, it was about 16 offices. So, we needed to demo completely and just rebuild from the inside out.
So as you were doing this, how was the community? Were they peeking in? Were they being curious? Like, what is this? What's going on here?
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of folks would drive up and just see what we were doing, because I would say it was April, May, like 3 months of us doing some renovations before we actually announced that our business would be opening. So it wasn't until July that we made a public notice that we would be opening within the next 6 months. So for those few 3 months in particular, people would be like, what's going on? What are you doing? And we were certainly eager to share what we were doing, and people were so curious. And also the fact that that is our hometown, so lots of folks know us anyway, and so just be stopping in to see how we were, and we hadn't been home in a couple of years, so it was really neat to see their interest was piqued.
Yeah, the curiosity was real.
Yeah.
So the community was very welcoming when everything started running?
Absolutely. People were welcoming, dropping by to see what we were doing. And again, that the name threw people off, so they really weren't sure what we were about. So once we opened, it was just like, we have to go in and see what these gals are up to.
All right. Now, as a young person, I remember as a kid, and I had friends, or my dad had friends who were pharmacists. And so in Yarmouth, where I'm from, there were a whole series of independent pharmacies. But it's not something you see anymore. Was that any kind of an issue? Is it hard to start an independent pharmacy?
So in Alberta and other provinces, there still are a lot of independent pharmacies. And it's intriguing. When we opened, we were the only independent pharmacy in the whole province of Nova Scotia. And it definitely did have its barriers or setbacks. You don't have the same kind of resources or buying power as the corporate chains do. But at the same time, we just knew that with our vision and, our goals for healthcare and providing care to our clients, it was our only way to practice. Was no banner or no chain, no corporate chain would fit what we were trying to do.
All right. So was that a difficult thing? Is it hard to buy drugs as an independent pharmacy?
It's not. It just involved a lot more work on our end up front. Like instead of, if you were to buy in under a banner or a corporate chain, they would do all of that initial setup for you. They would set up your agreements with wholesalers and insurance companies for you, where I had to reach out to every single one individually and get that all done. So it was just a little bit more time consuming, but overall everything is the same.
Okay. So between that and what you do, putting together, more natural compounds in that, and I'm assuming it's you particularly, or do the both of you do that together?
The pharmacy does the compounds, and but the front store piece, when Miranda was talking about like no banner could ever, would just align with what we're doing, that whole concept of sourcing products that come in, we could never fit under a banner. It just didn't seem to align with what we wanted to do, and we just wanted to remain independent so that we have a unique kind of brand identity.
So tell us a little bit about those kind of products that you have at the front of the store.
So when we bring in products, first of all, we have a pretty intense rubric for choosing how products come into the store and what comes in. We really do focus, like when people say, well, what do you carry? It's like, what do you think of when you think about a drugstore? Toothpaste, OTC medicines, shampoo, conditioner, etc. We carry all of those things, but we just are very, very intentional with what we're bringing in. So when we think about shampoo and conditioner, we've got that in bulk refills. And the particular brand, one of the brands that we love to carry, it's manufactured in Quebec by a family farm. They grow a lot of their own botanicals. They put this shampoo and conditioner together, and they sell it all across the country. And it comes in refill format. So it's good for people. It's good for the planet. That's just one example. But when we're looking for new products, but when we also did our initial kind of inventory sourcing, it was looking at where are these products made, who are they being made by, what's kind of the ethical direction of the company, what does their packaging look like, who are these folks? A lot of these companies that we, or brands that we carry in store are women-owned, they are Canadian companies, so we're really looking at intentional sourcing. And it's the same thing like, for example, deodorant. People come in and they're like, where's your deodorant? We don't have 20 types of deodorant to pick from because we have one brand that we absolutely love and people adore it and we know it works. And so that is the brand that we carry. We don't want to overwhelm people with choice. We want to give them access to products that have been vetted and that we personally can stand behind so that they don't have to stand there and be like, how do I choose? We just want small samplings of really high quality products.
That's something really special that you just don't see anywhere. So what you have is unique. As female founders, as entrepreneurs, have you run into any real challenges as you got going? What advice would you give to a female founder who is looking to do something?
Honestly, I just think following your intuition and if it feels good, do it. And we've had lots of advice thrown at us, over the last couple of years, and so much of it has been amazing and people really have helped us get to where we are. But a lot of times, a lot of that traditional business advice revolves around profit. We need to make a profit. To keep our doors open, we need to be looking at generating revenue. But that is not our only focus. And so we've really struggled with, not really struggled, but lots of folks are like, okay, well, you got to do this, or you got to make money. That's the most important thing. And yes, we do, but we also want to be very intentional with how we are making that money. And the choices that we make are still, we think about our employees. We think about the type of business we're trying to create. We think about how we can get to a place where we are able to, reinvest in our community. Those are still all of the things that are at the front of our mind. So yeah, I just, stay true to who you are and hold on to your values as much as you can, because those really get challenged, especially for us in these early years where, the financial uncertainty is real. That stress is real as a small business. And people will, the first thing they will tell you is to sacrifice some of those really important values that we hold dear. And we have been staying strong and really sticking to those. So
absolutely. I've worked in environments where basically it was implied to treat our patients like dollar signs. And I knew that if I was going to stay in pharmacy, that I would eventually have to open my own, because I wanted to practice to care about my patients and not just treat them like dollar signs. And yes, as a business owner, there is kind of that aspect. But to me, if I care and I provide a certain level of service, that helps us a lot more in the long run than just treating people like a dollar sign and a number.
I want to tell you about our Igniting Women in Business series at Ignite, providing rural women entrepreneurs an opportunity to connect, learn, and build their network through a series of initiatives, including a speaker series, gala, and retreat. We hope to inspire and empower rural women in business across the province. The theme is relearning through a women's lens. The sessions offer a space for women to discuss challenges that are faced by rural women in entrepreneurship, with opportunities to learn, network, and socialize. For more information on Igniting Women in Business and to sign up for our events newsletter, visit igniteatlantic.com.
Going back to the days when most pharmacies were independent, back when I was young, you would go, and I believe, I know myself personally at least, still go to the pharmacist that I trust for advice, and sometimes trust them more than a doctor. And these days, it's not necessarily the easiest thing in the world to find the doctor to talk to anyway. But on a very fundamental level, I think my pharmacist knows more about my health situation than my doctor does, because we talk a lot more. I'm sure that with what you do, you run into that a lot more. But the trust level between you and your customers must be huge.
Absolutely. That was our number one priority, is to provide top-notch patient care and build that relationship with our patients. And the feedback that we've gotten over the years has been incredible, and just that trust and appreciation for the service that we provide. And those little pieces of even, knowing your patients by first name when they come in. It might seem like something small, but it's so appreciative on their end just to know that, hey, this person remembers me, they know my story, and there's a lot of trust involved there.
Tell us a little bit about, and we have one of these in Yarmouth as well, and it's been very successful, the Community Pharmacy Primary Care Clinic Pilot Project. Tell us a little bit about that, because it sounds like it was built for you. I'll be honest.
Yeah, so I practiced in Alberta for 5 years before moving home, and Alberta did have a bit of a broader scope of practice for pharmacists. So I was kind of used to providing those services, and I kind of knew moving home it was going to be a little bit hard to step back a little bit and not be able to practice to my full scope. So when we heard about this pilot project, we were so excited, and we're like, okay, we need to apply. And to be chosen for the Antigonish region was so exciting, and it has been so rewarding. So originally we were offered a part-time site. So we were able to offer 20 hours a week of clinic hours, and we were booked because we, just like everywhere else in the province, have a shortage of physician care and access. So to be able to help alleviate some of that pressure off the other prescribers has been incredible. We were actually asked to increase our hours to a full-time clinic, a full 40-hour clinic. Unfortunately, we didn't have the staffing capacity at the time to offer that, so we stepped up to 30 hours, and that's what we're operating right now. It has been absolutely incredible. So it's an appointment-based model. We offer appointments for up to 2 weeks ahead for people who, say, are looking to get blood work requisitions or refills on prescriptions. But we also offer same-day, next-day booking for more urgent things like strep throat, bladder infections, shingles, those kinds of things that you can't wait 3 weeks to see your family doctor for. And it's been keeping a lot of folks out of eMERGE, which is really great, and also helping those folks who don't have access to family doctors and they need chronic care. So one of my favorite stories to tell, when we first opened, I had a gentleman who moved from Ontario 2 years ago, no doctor. He has a lot of chronic medical conditions, including diabetes, and hadn't had blood work in 2 years. So I sent him for the blood work, and I said, come back and see me after you get your blood work done. So he came back a couple of weeks later, and unfortunately his blood work was atrocious. His sugars were extremely elevated. His blood pressure and cholesterol were out of control. It was awful, just because he slipped through the cracks of our healthcare system. And within the means of the pilot project, we have the ability to add new medications for chronic disease management and adjust doses. So I was able to kind of get him started on some things that he needed. He followed up with more blood work 3 months later, and the improvement was phenomenal. So just like those little pieces have been so rewarding.
So you get to write the prescriptions. How does this work?
Yeah, we do. So under the pilot project, we are allowed to, for chronic diseases such as blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, and breathing conditions like COPD and asthma, we can change medications, we can add new ones on, or stop them as we see fit. And for all regular prescriptions, we're also allowed to renew them for as long as we deem appropriate. We can change them if they're having side effects, or if it's not controlled, we can adjust doses as well.
These kind of clinics can be a game changer in the situations that we're finding ourselves in these days, because it's terrifying how difficult it is for some people to be able to get that medical care.
Absolutely. And the other big thing I stress is that for folks who do have access to family physicians, we do work collaboratively with them. It's not an either-or situation. So, I've had patients who they couldn't get in to see their family doctor, but they weren't feeling well. I found out that their blood pressure was extremely elevated. So at that time, I would just bump up their dose of blood pressure medications, and I would send a letter to their family physician and say, hey, I saw so-and-so on this date. These are my results. This is what we did. That way there's like a complete circle of care, and everyone kind of stays up to date. Or sometimes I'll contact their family doctor and say, hey, this is what's going on. What do you think we should do here? So it's not an either-or situation. We are often working collaboratively.
That is really great. How many patients do you have, or is it a regular? Because being a clinic, it's kind of a walk-in, walk-out, but how many do you see?
We don't have a roster per se. It's open to everyone, whether they have a family physician or not. And so we operate 30 hours a week. So appointments can range from 15-minute appointments to 1-hour appointments. So it depends on what kind of service we're offering, how many patients we'll see in that day.
The other thing I wanted to ask about is your policy of having renewable glass vials, because it's amazing to me, and it's actually when I was going through some of the stuff that you guys are up to. Of course, you do the Google search, and what shows up but a CBC article about that, and I thought it was just amazing.
Yeah. So again, when we were kind of coming up with our business model, unfortunately in healthcare, there's a lot of waste that we can't avoid. a lot of single-use products and sterile environments that require a lot of waste. So we were just kind of looking, we had our model for the front store on how we were going to reduce waste, but what could we do in the pharmacy world? So we do have a lot of things that we've implemented, but the main thing that I wanted to try was the glass bottle program. A pharmacist in Quebec actually started it, and we were the first pharmacy in Nova Scotia to implement it. It's not required. It's an optional service that folks can ask for. We still offer, the regular plastic prescription bottles as well. But anyone who's on, chronic medications that they get refilled every month, those plastic bottles adds up. So we have an option where they can get them in a reusable glass instead. We offer two types of caps, like a child-proof cap or a twist-off for folks who find that easier. And all that we ask is there's a one-time deposit on the bottle of $2 or $3, depending on the size they need. But whenever they come back for refills, they just bring back their old bottle with them, and they have it washed and dried and the label peeled off. And then it goes through a sanitizing cycle at the pharmacy as well, and we just exchange them. So that way you're not throwing out a bottle every month. And what's been really fun is we have a wall in the store that we have tallies, and we've been keeping track of how many plastic bottles we've diverted from the landfill since we've opened. And in 2 years, we're almost at 5,000 bottles.
That is absolutely amazing. I love that.
Customers love it.
Yeah.
I would think so. To me, it's a throwback to the old days. And everything that's old is new again. And to me, people talk about glass vials as if it's an innovation.
Yes.
But it's the way things used to be. And perhaps that trip backwards a little bit is absolutely the way that we should be going. It's wonderful.
It's funny you say that, because we have lots of folks who are very excited about the concept of the glass bottles, but also about refilling things in the store. And they're excited and it feels new and fun. And then we've got lots of folks who come in who are older folks in the community, and they say, yeah, this is what we did when we were young. We refilled our stuff. And it's awesome, because you're absolutely right. This is not a new concept. I think it's just people starting to rethink that kind of boom of disposable throwaway items, and we need to be a little bit more conscious of what that means. Where's the end life for that product? In a landfill somewhere.
I also love the idea of small and independent. To me, it's perfect for what we do as a rural group. Ignite has always based itself kind of looking from a rural perspective. And to me, small is what makes us mighty. And that's what you are. And that's what you're doing, is you're creating those opportunities for community to build around you, which is really exciting. What's next for you guys? Is there a scaling growth? How do you go from here?
Oh, we get asked this all the time. And for us, it's like we've celebrated 2 years. We've been open for 2 years this past January, which is really exciting. And I think for us right now, we're focusing on the end of the pilot project. That's going to be interesting to see where the community pharmacy clinics go, and we'll kind of have decisions to make about implementing a full-time clinic or what that looks like. We get asked about other locations, and we are so exhausted at the moment that we can't even think about that. But I think it's really focusing on what does clinic look like? What are the clinical services? What does that scope look like? And just continuing to dive into our community.
Alicia and Miranda, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for what you're doing. It's unique, it's exciting, and it is perfectly rural. I think that you're going to touch an awful lot of people, and I think you already have.
Thank you so much, Wade. We really appreciate that.
To find out more about Teasdale Apothecary, visit their website, teasdaleapothecary.com. They can also be found on Facebook and Instagram. To find out more about rural innovation and what Ignite does, check out igniteatlantic.com. You can follow Ignite Atlantic on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And follow me on LinkedIn as well. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you subscribe to Ignited, shared us with your friends. Hey, word of mouth really matters. And give us a good review. And remember, you can find past episodes anytime by looking over our archive wherever you download your pods. And we'd love to hear from you. Any comments or suggestions about the podcast, or who you'd like to hear on it, and maybe that's you, are most welcome. Email me, Wade, W-A-D-E, @igniteatlantic.com. I'm Wade Cleveland. Thanks for listening. Talk soon.